now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. We are so thrilled to introduce a man who really needs no introduction. I mean, this guy, he's the author of more than 70 books. He has spoken literally to millions of people around the world. He is a true legend, and Jane and I had the privilege of meeting him and in his home with his wife Barbara and his family earlier this year with some of our speakers. And we just feel like we've known him all our lives. And I mean, he's that nice a guy. He's that warm. Let's bring the legendary Brian Tracy to the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Tracy.
Hello.
There you are, Brian. It's so nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. We are going to let you go and do your magic. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, the legendary Brian Tracy. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jane. Thank you for being here. I want to make the next hour one of the most important hours in your life. So Steve and Jane and I have spent a lot of time talking about selecting what would be the most important and most helpful things, especially in this time of the coronavirus. You can see me here in my office. I'm in California. We have 40 million people in California, and we are forced to stay at home. If we go out, we have to wear a mask. And I just heard from my housekeeper that if you go to the ocean, which is not far from here, and look at the ocean, they fine you $1,000 for being out of your house. And so I'm not going to look at the ocean today. Anyway, so one of the questions I like to start off with is, what is the highest paid work that you do? What is the most valuable, most important, highest paid work that you do? And when I first heard that question, I was a little bit unclear. And then I found out that it is thinking. Thinking is the highest paid and most important work that you do. And it's because of a word. It's one of my favorite words. I've studied economics and philosophy and history all my life. And it's the word consequences. Is that something is important in time management, something is important to the degree to which it has big potential consequences. Something is unimportant to the degree to which it has low or no potential consequences. And the difference between success and failure is successful people do things that have big potential consequences. And unsuccessful people spend too much of their time doing things that have no consequences for them by their own definition. It's not me saying you should or shouldn't do this. It is what you want. You want to be happy. You want to be healthy, as Linda was saying. You want to be financially independent. You want to be successful in your work and your business. Well, how do you spend your time? At the very least, 50% of the average person's time is spent engaged in activities that have no value at all. They drink coffee, they play on the computer, they shop on Amazon, they waste their time, and so on. So you find that successful people are those who basically change their lives, so they're spending more and more time doing those things that have the greatest consequences. Now, I'm a student of economics and have been forever. And one of my favorite economists was Milton Friedman. I actually had dinner with Milton Friedman in San Francisco some years ago. And Milton Friedman had this very interesting observation. He said, the quality of your thinking is determined by how accurately you can predict future events based on your thinking. So therefore, if you say this is a good thing to do or not to do, how accurately does that predict success or failure in the future? And again, it comes back to consequences. So you have to ask yourself, what are the keys to thinking? Well, some years ago, not some years ago, about four years ago, the biggest publishers in the world, which is a company called Penguin Random House. They have an umbrella, if you like, they have 500 publishing houses under that umbrella. They came to me and they said, we would like to publish 2 books by you. Well, this is incredible. It just never happens in the world of writing. Mostly people think of a book, they write a book, and they go from publisher to publisher and agent to agent. But in this case, they called me and said, please write 2 books for us. And I said, okay, what subject? Because I have been approached in the past, and publishers will say, well, we'd like you to write, for example, one publisher asked me to write a book on self-discipline, which I did, and which is now a worldwide bestseller. Another publisher asked me to write a book on time management, and I wrote the book Eat That Frog, which has now sold 10 million copies in 46 languages. So sometimes publishers come to me, and there's a lot of reasons. One is that my material is very readable, and it's very high in content, and it's always on time. And when I send them a manuscript, they say the manuscript is print ready, which means they don't have to spend 6 months with editors cleaning up the material. I complete my responsibility, which is I will submit to you a complete, finished, polished manuscript. So publishers like that. It comes in, it goes straight to the publisher, and it sells a lot of copies. Anyway, so they said, we want two books from you. And I said, well, I've been thinking about 2 books. And one of the books was a book about thinking. And what I found is that the most successful people think differently. And if you just change your thinking, as we say, change your thinking, change your life. If you just change your thinking, sometimes in one small way, your whole life will be different thereafter. It's very important. I'll give you an example, just no extra charge. But when you accept responsibility for your life, which is the biggest decision that you make, it's the difference between childhood and adulthood. And accepting responsibility means that you basically say, I am responsible. I'm responsible for my life. And if there's something in my life that I'm not happy about, it's up to me to change it. And I'll talk about this a little bit later. But the main thing is that the great majority of people, 80% or more, are still blaming their parents, and they're blaming their previous relationships and their boss and people who had done them dirty and so on. They go through life with a cloud, like that cloud in Little Abner's cartoon, this cloud over their head, and they're always complaining about someone or something else. What, as like Linda was talking about, and as other people teach, is that the giant leap into adulthood is when you say, I'm responsible for my own life. And you shut the door behind you. And from then on, you just simply accept you're responsible. Now you have to take action. Now you have to get on with it. Anyway, so that is one type of thinking. And I've taught this in my seminars all over the world. And I get emails every week from all over the world, people saying, you changed my life. You changed my life. That one idea, I never thought that. I thought that if I was angry or unhappy because of something that happened in my life, well, that's the normal and natural way to be. No, it's not. It's completely a choice. And this is a wonderful thought. So anyway, so I said, I'd like to write a book on thinking. And I've developed a series of thinking styles. I've read hundreds and hundreds of hours on the subject. So I sent them a proposal. They rubber stamped it. They sent it back to me. I published the book. The book has now been sold worldwide in multiple languages. And we had all kinds of titles. We ended up with Get Smart. That's the title, Get Smart. Think the way smart people think. So when we say that the way that you think determines the quality of your life, there's 3 ways of thinking that I'll just throw out to you of the 10 in this book. One, it's a Nobel Prize winning literature, and it has to do with short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. It has to do, and I spent, and it is basically thinking. I'm sorry, my mind is just oh, here it is here. I've got all my notes here. I've got enough notes to speak for about 45 days without repetition. Okay, here it is here. Yes, all right. Here's my 3 contributions. The first is called fast versus slow thinking. A man named Daniel Kahneman, who's a brilliant economist, won a Nobel Prize for this concept, fast versus slow thinking. And this is very important today in the crisis that we're in, and for you and for the rest of your life. And what he said was basically this, is that most people think quickly. It's like driving through traffic. You make decisions quickly. You go to a buffet, you pick food quickly. You don't put a lot of thought into it. And so fast thinking is the way most people live their lives. He said, however, there's another way of thinking. It's called slow thinking. And the critical factor is the consequences of your thinking. So if you're doing something that is not that important, what do you have at the buffet? You change from this lane to that lane. Not a big deal. But if it's something that has long-term consequences, it requires slow thinking. And what Kahneman did is he pointed out that almost all the problems you have in life is that you think quickly and act quickly when you should be thinking slowly and thinking carefully. So that's why your mother always told you, think it over before you act. Count to 10 before you act, and so on. So the mark of the superior thinking, of the superior thinker, is this person thinks long-term, is they look down the road of life and they say, if I did this or didn't do this, what would be the likely consequences? And what Milton Friedman said is your ability to accurately predict the consequences of your behavior is the mark of the superior thinking. And all you need to do to become vastly more intelligent, to actually increase your IQ, is just slow down and take your time and write things down and think carefully. This is what Steve teaches, this is what Jane teaches, this is what each of our friends teach, is think it through carefully before you act. So the second way of thinking is called short-term versus long-term thinking. And what we know is that if you want to be financially independent, if you want to earn a lot of money, if you want to live in a big house and have a wonderful life, you have to think long-term. The great majority of people, just like the great majority of people think quickly versus slowly, the great majority of people think short-term, and they focus on short-term gratification, short-term pleasure, short-term everything. Today, you have to think long-term. You have to think, where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 10 years? Well, I have taught countless people. I've spoken personally in my seminars to more than 5 million people in 84 countries. The last country I spoke in was in December in Dagestan, in southern Russia on the Caspian Sea. And excuse me, I've actually visited 126 countries, but in terms of speaking, where they pay you for speaking, is it's been 84 countries. And the one thing that I teach is that successful people are people who think 5 and 10 years into the future. And they say, where do I want to be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? And then you come back to the present and you say, what steps will I have to take today to get to where I want to be in the future? Today we have this crisis, with the coronavirus. And this is a time where you need to slow down, time out, stop and think, where do I want to be in the future? And people are always saying, well, if I had enough time, I would read this and I would plan this and I would take, well, now you have enough time. And now you have enough time to sit down and say, where do I want to be in 5 years? And what will it look like? And my favorite word in success is the word clarity. Successful people are clear about where they want to be in the future. And successful people are clear about every aspect of their business. Let me give you something that was just revolutionary to me a few years ago. I was reading an article in Fortune magazine, just one idea, and it pointed out that 80% of businesses, according to Harvard, are operating on an obsolete or semi-obsolete business model. And I'd really seen business modeling before and I hadn't thought about it, but this really opened my eyes up because I speak to company owners all over the world. And so I began to study business models. What I found is that there's 55 different business models, and 80% of people, including Fortune 500 companies, are working on an obsolete or semi-obsolete business model. In other words, they're working on rules that don't work anymore. So what happens with a business model? You start a business, you copy somebody else who's in the same business, you do pretty much the same thing. You almost go through life by backing up and hitting things and getting out to see what it was. And what we do is we make decisions based on information that often we're not clear about. And so what you have to do is ask, is my business model the correct business model for me at this time? So a business model, the definition, if you like, of a business model is a profit model. This is the way that you generate profits for your business and for your life. So the question is, are you generating sufficient, stable, predictable, and growing levels of profits in your business? And today, because of the coronavirus, this is a time where we need to time out and ask, because everybody now is working on the wrong business model. And so I always ask these questions. The first time I give my seminar, it's a 2-day seminar called Business Model Reinvention. I had given a seminar the day before. At the end of the day, my client said, they love your stuff. Have you got anything else? I said, well, I have this seminar that I've developed. They said, tell them about it. So I said, I got up and I said, okay, how can you sell a $1,000 seminar, 2 days? And I came up with a very simple sales presentation. By the way, Peter Drucker, very interesting. Peter Drucker said, the only real measure in business is, does it work? And that's one of the most important questions that you ask throughout your life, and especially in business. Does it work? Is it working? Is it getting the results that you want? So you start off with clarity. These are the results that I want to get. And in business, the results that we want to get are sales and profitability. And never lose track of that. Sales and profitability. Sales lead to profitability. What's the number one reason for business success? High sales. What's the number one reason for business failure? Low sales. And everything else is commentary. And don't get distracted. Steve and I were talking about this. I often start a sales seminar. I'm not getting off track. I'm coming back. I started a sales seminar for 1,000 salespeople. And I say, I'll ask them a question. I say, why do you get up in the morning and go to work? Why do you get up in the morning and go to work? And people sort of nod and smile. And I say, well, the answer is very simple. You get up in the morning and go to work so that you can make more money. And would you agree with that? You don't want to make the same. You don't want to make less. You want to make more money. So everybody nods and smiles. I said, okay, so we call this MMM. So why do you get up in the morning and go to work? MMM, to make more money. I said, now you go to work and you get into work. Now, how do you make more money at work? Well, it's called SMS, sell more stuff. So you MMM so that you can SMS, or you SMS so you can MMM. Would everybody agree with that? And everybody says, yes, we agree. I said, great. So the only time that you're actually working, MMMing, is when you're SMSing, selling more stuff. You're not working when you're talking to your friends and playing on the internet and talking to people about coffee and going for lunch and so on. The only time that you're working is when you're SMSing. Other than that, you might as well go home and pull the sheets up over your head and go back to sleep. And people shake their heads. So how much time does the average person spend SMSing as an entrepreneur? Well, the studies go back to 1928 and never changed. It's about 90 minutes a day. The average entrepreneur and the average salesperson spends about 90 minutes a day generating revenues. And everything else is warming up and warming down and talking to their friends and coming to work and leaving work and going shopping. It's astonishing. People don't really realize this, but if you start to track, and I did this with a large company a few years ago. They said, well, I said, what is your goal for my speaking to their 300 salespeople? They said, well, we want to increase our sales and profitability. I said, well, that's pretty simple to do because your people are only working 90 minutes a day anyway. This is on the phone with the vice president of sales of the company in Kentucky. So I've never met them before. They've never met me before. And he was a little bit offended. And he said, well, how can you say something like that? Our people are professional. They're very carefully hired and they're carefully trained and they're carefully managed. How can you say they only work 90 minutes a day? They don't work. I mean, I said, listen, the statistics go back to 1928. And this is the fact, is that they only work 90 minutes a day. They said, I said, I'll tell you what, let's do an experiment. Let's get everybody a stopwatch. Go down to the military supply store and get everybody a stopwatch and have them take this stopwatch. And when they go in, and by the way, you're only SMSing when you're face-to-face or ear-to-ear with a customer. If you're not face-to-face, and today, ear-to-ear or screen-to-screen, if you're not face-to-face in communication with a customer, you're not working. you're warming up and warming down, but you're not working until you're actually doing something that can lead to a sale. So I said, let's buy stopwatches for everybody and then explain what I just told you, and then have everybody just track every day when they go in to see a customer. And these people were selling advertising in a variety of television, radio, magazines, newspapers, and so on. I said, so what you'll do is they'll just click on when they go in, and they'll click off and write it down. At the end of each day, they'll calculate how many minutes did you spend face-to-face with customers, end of each week, end of each month, and we'll see what happens. Well, the most amazing thing, they decided, well, all right, let's go full blast, is what we'll do is we'll make the annual sales convention like a military theme, and we'll have military clothes and camouflage, and that everybody will hear what you're saying, and everybody will be given a stopwatch. It only costs about $10, and everybody will be explained what you just said, and everybody will agree that we will track our sales every single day, every single week for an entire month, and submit the results. And so they did. And about 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, I got a phone call from the president or the vice president of marketing. And he said, I have to apologize to you. He said, I dismissed your predictions about how many minutes a day. He said, we got all the reports back. Everybody reported. He said, the average salesperson in our company, after years of experience, is actually spending face-to-face with customers 92 minutes a day. 92 minutes a day. It's above 90 minutes, but 92 minutes a day. He said, and we're all just shaking our heads. And so as they track this, now here's one of the most important discoveries in psychology, is if you focus on anything, you start to improve it. So let's say you focus on the presentation that you make or the prospecting that you do. If you start to think about how to become better at finding new customers, you actually start to improve in that area. If there's any number in your business, Jim Collins, of the author of Good to Great, says that every company has an economic denominator, a critical number, that one number that is more important in predicting sales and profits than any other number in your business. So the question you have to ask is, what is your number? What is your economic denominator? What is the one number that more predicts success than anything else? Now, in many companies, the number stays the same for a long time. In some companies, it changes. Like today, the economic denominator, the most important focal point of your business, is different from before because of the nature of the virus and the fact that we have to stay at home or in our office. So what is your number? And I have worked out, you see all the stuff behind me, I worked out 35 numbers that I took from all my business materials and so on. I teach 20 of them in my business courses, but there's 35 different numbers. And if you can pick the right number, if you have the wrong number, by the way, you just struggle and struggle and struggle to be successful. If you get the right number and everybody thinks about that number, then the whole results of your business will change. Let me give you an example. I was talking to a business owner recently, and he's got a high-tech business, and their number, I'll pass this on to you because I love it. He said their number is number of referrals per customer and per sale, number of referrals per day, number of referrals per person who interacts with customers, just number of referrals. And they measure it every day, and they talk about it during the day, and they give promotions and advances and free lunches and everything else based on number of referrals. And the company just grows and grows and grows. And why is that? Because a referral is the very best business you can get. A referral is your customer's testimony that you do good work. And you do such good work that I'm going to tell my friends to buy from you. And so his company, their economic denominator is number of referrals. And the company just grows and grows. Another company that I work with sells subscriptions online. But when you sell online subscriptions, you have a certain number of people who bail or cancel their subscriptions each day. So their number, and this is, it's so simple. Their number is net new. And they have a big electric scoreboard in the office where everybody can see it. And it's the number of new subscribers that they bring in, less the number of subscribers who cancel, the net new. And everybody in the company looks at and focuses on net new every day, every week, every month. It's all they think about is net new. How can we get more people subscribing and buying our services versus the number of people who unsubscribe or cancel? So my question to you is, what is your number? What is your number that determines your future and your success? So anyway, so short-term versus long-term thinking, you would think long-term in terms of how you build steady sales. And so in my seminar, when I first began to promote business model reinvention, I asked this question, very simple question. I said, well, let me tell you whether or not this seminar is good for you or right for you. It's very simple. What you do is if your business sales and profits are going up and up and up and steady, that means that you have a good business model, that your business is good. You don't have to worry about it. Just keep doing more and more of what you're doing and do it better and better. But if your sales are going up and down, fluctuating and not consistent, and you are a little bit nervous about your business and your income and so on, well, that's a suggestion that maybe your business model is obsolete. Maybe it needs to be changed. Or if your sales are flat, if they're not going up at all, no matter what you do, it's a very good likelihood that your business model is obsolete. And the worst of all is when your sales are going down. So I said, so if you are in the second three, if your sales are fluctuating, or if your sales are flat, or if your sales are going down, well, then maybe you should come to the seminar. There are 1,000 people in this room, all business owners. 800 went to the table in the back of the room and signed up for the seminar. And by the time we gave the seminar, the room held 1,000 people. We had 1,000 people in the room and 200 watching by screens out in the hallway. And the seminar itself got standing ovations at every break. We got 4 standing ovations every day. It's because the business owners love this idea of thinking about their business model and thinking in terms of, does it work? Does it work? Is it working? Is it my sales going up and up? And if they're not, then what you have to do is you have to pull back and say, well, wait a minute. Let's look at the business model again. Now, what is the biggest enemy of success in business? And what I have found, and Steve has found, and Jane has found, it's the comfort zone. The comfort zone is the natural tendency of human beings to become comfortable doing something in a certain way. And it's really funny. I give an example of that. Is you go into a seminar room and everybody sits down, and then I say, now, after the break, I want you to come back and I want you to sit in a different chair. Now, you've only sat in that chair 90 minutes for the first part of the seminar. Come back, sit in a different chair and see how people react to you who were sitting in that chair before. And everybody is pissy. They come back and they were sitting in that's my chair. I was sitting in that chair. It's amazing how quickly we get into a comfort zone and how irritated we are when we get pushed out of the comfort zone. So what you find in business, and if you are helping people to be successful in business, the biggest obstacle you have to overcome is people get into a comfort zone and they resist change of any kind, even positive change, even good change. And they will even say to you, yes, that's a good idea. Yes, you're right. I should do that. But, and the word but is called the great eraser. In other words, the word but erases everything that just was said. So they say, oh, it's a good idea and I should do it and everything else, but that just erases everything. That means that you are rejecting everything that happened. So for you, you always have to be alert to the danger of the comfort zone. And especially today, you have a natural tendency today to try to get back into your comfort zone, get back into doing what you were doing before the virus. Now, maybe you will go back to what you were doing before the virus, but maybe things have changed forever. maybe even when it all comes back, business will be different. Competition. You know, one of the biggest factors, I sometimes ask my clients, I said, who sets your prices, by the way? And who determines how much you sell? And who determines your profit level of profitability? And who determines the size of the house you live in, and the car you drive, and the school that your kids go to, and the restaurants that you dine at? Who determines all those things in your business and personal life? And they all say, I do, me. I said, no, you don't. Your competition determines all those things. Your competition determines how much you sell, and determines how much you charge, and determines how much profit you have, and determines how much money you have left over for your lifestyle, and so on. Your competition. So one of the things you have to do is you have to study your competition all the time. Most of my life, I have been fascinated by military generalship. And what the first thing you learn, and I've studied some of I even wrote a book on this called Victory, the 12 Principles of Military Strategy Applied to Business and Personal Life. It's a great book, Victory. And what it basically says is there's 12 principles. And the basic one is that every single commander or general is totally determined in what they do by what the enemy is going to do. Nobody says, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. No, you're not going to do this. You're not going to do a damn thing. The enemy is going to determine what you do and what you don't do, and whether you succeed or fail. And so you always have to be thinking. And when I do strategic planning for my clients, the first thing I ask is, who or what is your competition? Who or what is your competition? By the way, this is just a quick aside, but you know, sometimes the biggest competitor you have, and we call this the competitor, is the limit, what limits your sales and profitability. Sometimes it's that the potential customer doesn't know how much better off they can be with your product. They don't know it. And as a result, they don't buy it. As a result, they express disinterest in looking at your offering. I'm not interested. I don't want it. I can't afford it. I'm not in the market, and so on. Sometimes the biggest enemy of all is not a competitive organization. It's ignorance on the part of a potential customer. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is turn on the light, is to show them and explain to them how much better off they can be in their business or personal life by using your product or service the way you offer it. And when a company is able to do that, their sales explode, and they just literally walk away from their competition. Quick story, example, there's this guy who's driving from one city to another, and he drives every single week, and he drives on this country highway, and he drives along, and he likes to drive fast, and he drives really fast. And every single week there is a highway patrolman on a motorcycle who's waiting for him, and he pulls him off and gives him a ticket. And this happens about 3 or 4 weeks in a row. And he gets really angry. He said, doggone it. He said, I'm going to fix this highway patrolman. So he goes and takes his car into the shop, and he has the car loaded with this powerful engine powered by nitroglycerin. It's like a rocket engine, but it's the same car. And he goes back and he's driving along with it, and he's speeding. And this highway patrolman pulls out on the motorcycle and comes up next to him, and big smile, he says, pull off. And so what he does, he says, okay. And then he steps on the accelerator, and the car goes wham, like a rocket down the road. And he just literally disappears over the horizon. And he slows down, eventually slows down, and the cop disappeared as well. So he waits, and the cop never shows up. And they've almost become friends, because you give him a ticket every week. So he turns around and he goes back, and he finds this hole in the fence next to the highway. The motorcycle had gone off the road and into the fields and flipped over. And this guy was all beat to crap. I mean, bleeding all over the place. The motorcycle is destroyed. So he parks the car and he gets up and he goes over and he helps him up. He said, how you doing? He said, what happened? He said, well, when you stepped on the gas, he said, I thought my motorcycle had quit. So I got off to see what happened. Anyway, that's probably too quick for you. But the thing is that you can organize your business so that you make so many sales that so far as your competition goes, they think that you've just literally broken all the barriers, and often they will even quit. So thinking is the most important thing you do. And in this time of coronavirus, I want to give you one thinking tool that I've taught to more than 1,000 companies. Many companies say that this one tool changed the company, tripled their sales, made them rich. And I call it zero-based thinking. And zero-based thinking is a very simple technique where you ask yourself this question. You draw a line under everything you've done in the past. This is very important today. And you say, is there anything that I am doing today that, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't start up again today if I had to do it over? And you zero base all of your previous decisions and imagine that you were starting over. Is there any business that I'm in today, or any business activity, product or service or sale or method of marketing, that, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't start doing that again today? Is there any person that's working for me that, knowing what I know, I wouldn't hire? Is there any customer that I have that, knowing what I now know, I would not begin selling to because they're just too much trouble? Is there any investment of time or money or emotion that I would not get into again today if I had to do it over? And I always ask this question. I say, how can you tell if you're in a zero-based thinking situation? And the answer is stress. Is whenever you experience chronic stress, I mean stress that just keeps coming back, and you think about it, it keeps you awake at night, you talk about it, you know, over the family dinner table and so on. And sometimes you even drive past your turnoff because you're thinking about this source of stress. And 85% of your zero-based thinking situations, we say, come with hair on top. Is there other people? Is there people that cause you aggravation and more aggravation? So I always say that if 85% are relationships, so ask yourself, is there any relationship in your life that, knowing what you now know, you wouldn't get into again today if you had to do it over? And if there is, and Drucker said this, if you find yourself in a situation like this, then get out, and get out immediately, because it means that that relationship is over. It's finished, can never be solved. So therefore, if your answer is no, the next question is, how do you get out and how fast? How do you get out of this relationship and how fast? And it's absolutely life transforming, and it's business transforming. For example, today you are selling products and services that during normal times were good products and services, and they had a good market and were reasonably profitable. Today, however, the whole world has changed. So you have to ask yourself, would you start offering these products again? A very successful businessman taught me a method that I've taught now for years and years and years, and it's called the walk across the street method of business evaluation. And it's very simple. This: imagine that you come to work and in the morning, and your business is burned to the ground. The business is destroyed. Everything's gone. All of your staff are okay. They're out in the parking lot watching the business burn down. Well, as it happens, there's available offices or facilities across the street, and you can walk across the street and start your business over again. If you were in a situation like that and you started across the street, the first question is what products would you want to bring back onto the market right away? And what products would come later? And what products would you perhaps not bring back to the market? The second question is, of all the people standing in the parking lot, which people would you take with you for your new business? And which people would you leave in the parking lot? Think of your products and services. Which of your products and services would you begin producing right away? And which would you maybe not start producing again? So always imagine, and Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence, he said you should do this with your business every 6 months. You should do this if you don't own a business. Do this with your career every 6 months. Imagine that you were starting over, going to walk across the street and start your career over again. Is there anything that you would do differently from what you're doing today? Zero-based thinking, is there anything you would not get into again? And during this time of coronavirus, these are very important questions to ask, because what they do is they force you to really think long-term. They force you to think slowly. And the third type of thinking that I was going to tell you, I was going to give you three, is basically informed thinking versus uninformed thinking. And I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. So some years ago, when I began teaching, I want to move to crisis management. I found that crisis management is one of the most important skills that you develop. In fact, I began to teach it in my leadership seminars. And I have now worked with more than 1,000 large companies, Fortune 500 companies, some of the biggest companies in the world. And one of the first things I teach is about crisis management. And Peter Drucker said this wonderful thing. He said, the only thing that is inevitable in the life of the leader is the crisis. It's unavoidable. It will come unexpectedly, but it's always there. And the true test of the leader is how you function in a crisis. That's the true test, is how you function in a crisis. So when you have a crisis like we have today, this is the testing time. This is the time that tells what you're made of. This is the time that tells your true character, your ability to handle situations like this. And what is needed more than anything else, and Churchill said this, he said, the most important quality at the sticking point is courage, is you've got to have courage. And it takes tremendous courage to make the decisions that you're going to have to make to survive and thrive today and in the future. And so your ability to deal with a crisis is a test. And the interesting thing is, there was a wonderful piece of metaphysics that was written about more than 100 years ago that said that when you deal with a crisis, it's very much like heating steel or heating iron. And you heat the iron with tremendous heat. And what happens is you change it to a higher form of steel, and it never goes back. And when you go through a crisis, it forces you to become a bigger and stronger and better person than you've ever been, and you never go back. From that day onward, you are more of a leader. From that day onward, you have greater strength of character, you have greater courage, you have greater tenacity. So when you have a difficult situation like this, first thing you do is you say, okay, this is the testing time. Now let's test. So what I did is I got so many responses from my clients about crisis management that I went and I wrote a book on it. I was doing work with the American Management Association. I've written 20 books with them over the years. And I had a book, and my book is going to be called Crunch Time, What to Do When the Blank Hits the Fan. And they found that somebody else had copyrighted the words crunch time, and they didn't want to get into a legal deal. So they came up with Crunch Point, and the 21 secrets to succeeding when it matters most. And it's 21 things that you can do to deal with any crisis. And I think I'm the only person who's ever written a book exclusively on crisis management. And if someone else has written it, it hasn't sold very many copies. So this is really great. It's got 21 things to do. And what I want to share with you is 5 of them. 5 things that you can do to deal with any crisis now and for the rest of your career. And the first, number 1, and I have taught this to thousands and thousands of business owners and entrepreneurs, and you can teach it as well. Number 1 is to stay calm. Number 1 is to stay calm. And when every study that I've looked at, I've seen all kinds of stuff come to me in the last few weeks, and they all say, stay calm, stay calm. Yeah, I live here in San Diego, which is down by the Mexican border, and I used to live in Mexico, and so I learned to speak Spanish. And there's an expression in Spanish, and it's calmate, which means calm yourself, be calm, calm yourself. And that's why your mother would say, calm down, take a deep breath, don't get upset. the mark of character is how you behave in a crisis. And the most important thing you do is you take a deep breath. Just calm down. And the reason for this is that if you get excited, your ability to think clearly diminishes dramatically. If you get excited, if you get angry, if you get upset or worried, what happens is you just can't think clearly. And therefore you will make bad decisions that will have bad consequences that you'll regret in the future. So sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. Just stop, time out, back off. So one of the things that I learned when I began to teach was that the biggest obstacle to success in adult life is the fear of failure. The fear of failure, which is the fear of loss, the fear of loss of love, the fear of loss of money, the fear of loss of success, the fear of loss of anything. The fear of loss, the fear of failure is the number one reason for failure in adult life. It's thinking about failure and what would happen if this happened? What would I do then? And so on. And so what you have to do is just take a deep breath and don't get excited and realize it's a normal and natural reaction when you are threatened with loss for you to become angry, become worried, and for you to think poorly. So what you do is you take a deep breath, and we say how you talk to yourself determines how you think and feel. So what you do is you talk to yourself in a positive way. You talk to yourself calmly. One of the most powerful set of words you can use is, I can do this. I can do this. This is okay. I can handle this. No problems. I used to teach my sales audiences. I say, what is the most important quality for success in sales? And we go back and forth on this. And I said, well, when I was in my late 20s, I was going out with a girl, and she asked me, what is your best quality? And I couldn't think for a while. And then I realized I traveled all over the world. I'd been in all kinds of stuff. I said, I think my best quality is that I am unstoppable. I'm unstoppable. I just never quit. And she said, based on my knowledge of you, I would agree. And other people said the same thing based on their experience with me, is I am unstoppable. I said, now, it's also the most important quality for success in life is to persevere, is to never quit, never give up, is to be unstoppable. I said, and how do you become unstoppable? Would you like to have a magic pill that you could pop it and become unstoppable? And everybody agrees. Yeah. I said, well, it's very simple. You become what you think about most of the time. You become what you say to yourself most of the time. So what you do is you say to yourself, I am unstoppable. And what happens is your subconscious mind accepts that as a command. And it gives you the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the behaviors consistent with it. So everybody here, my average sales audience was about 1,600 people for almost 20 years. And I would say, all right, everybody here say, I am unstoppable. So everybody would get into the act and they say, I'm unstoppable. I said, no. I said, I want you to really say it like you mean it. I am unstoppable. And so they say, okay, I am unstoppable. I said, no. Don't suck your thumb. Say, I am unstoppable. And this time they would all shout, I am unstoppable. I say, now from now on, for the rest of your career, whenever you have the slightest thought about quitting or giving up or going home early, you say to yourself, I am unstoppable. I'm unstoppable. And you know what? It will become a part of your programming. It'll become, it would reach the point where you just never quit. It'll never occur to you to quit. There's many things that we can do differently, but one thing is don't quit. Is we may try something different. We may slow down. We may reevaluate, but you never quit. So I pass that on to you. Just say to yourself, I am unstoppable. And I used to give this seminar all over the country. And then the following year, after I started giving this little story, somebody wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's in the bookstores. And there's a basic rule. If you come up with a good idea, somebody's going to steal it. Sometimes people say, well, can I use your idea? I say, sure, because they're going to use it anyway. So you might as well make a virtue of it. So you say, sure, go ahead. So somebody wrote this book, I Am Unstoppable. I've got copies of it here. They sent it to me. They didn't want to tell me that they learned this idea, but you can learn this from my seminar, but you can learn it as well. Just say to yourself, they say, never say anything to yourself that you don't want to be true. It's one of the basic rules of success psychology. So just basically say, I can do anything I put my mind to. If you want to have a great influence on the people around you, especially your children, you tell them, you know, you can do anything you put your mind to. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And my kids have all grown up, and now they cannot imagine quitting. It just is not in their vocabulary. They try many different things, but they are so confident that they will eventually be successful. They just never quit. And as a result, their levels of self-confidence, their happiness, their courage, is a wonderful thing. So if you want to help other people, tell other people that they're unstoppable as well. And in this time of the coronavirus, talk to yourself in a positive way. You say, basically, we will get through this. We will find a solution. You get up, over, around, back. We will find a way through. So talk to yourself in a positive way and talk to other people in a positive way. We say here, look for the good in every situation. This is one of the great psychological principles, is say there must be something good in this situation. Well, here you are, you're like me, you're forced to go home and you have to work from home, and you actually have to market your products and services and deliver them and get paid and a whole lot of other things. The natural tendency is to think, boy, this sucks. This is really difficult. You've never had to do this before in your whole life. So you look for the good in this situation and ask yourself, what is it that is good? What is it that I can learn or benefit from? And you know something, if you look for the good, you'll always find it. You'll always find something good. Maybe this is a great opportunity, like walking across the street. Maybe this is a good opportunity to reorganize your business, to start doing different things, to discontinue products and services that weren't that great, but because of the comfort zone, you keep trying to flog them into a market that doesn't want to buy them. When we had the recession back in 2001, I had a lot of people ask me, would you should prepare a coaching program for entrepreneurs, for business owners. And I said, okay, but I didn't want to do coaching one-on-one because it didn't pay enough. So they said, well, why don't you do a group coaching program? And that was a one-liner from one gentleman in Phoenix, good friend of mine. He said, you could do group coaching. And bang, it changed my whole attitude toward coaching. So I put together a coaching program. It was 4 full-day seminars with me in San Diego and with about 20 or 30 other entrepreneurs. And I charged them $4,000 or $5,000 per person for the year. And I guaranteed them is that if you don't double your income and double your time off in the course of the next 12 months, then you get your money back, no charge. So it's guaranteed. And so people sign up, and eventually I put up more than 1,000 business owners in groups of 30 and 40 through this coaching program. And I developed exercises and so on. But I began to study all the exercises used by the most successful people. And I found that there's only 4 ways to bring about change in your business or your personal life. And so I'll just quickly tell you these before I go on. Number 1, if you want to change, is you can do more of some things. So the question you always have to ask, if you want to increase your income, cut your costs, become financially independent, what do you have to do more of? And the answer is, you have to do more of those things that are working the very best for you today. And you would think, well, that's obvious. No, but it's not obvious, because many people think that you have to be fair and you have to do a certain number of things that work, and you have to be fair to things that don't work and do a certain number of things that don't work. You have to kind of spread the time around. No, what you do is you do only those things that are working really well. And the second thing you can do or change is you can do fewer of things that aren't working. And the third thing that you can do is you can start doing something completely new and different. And this is the hardest thing of all, but it is usually the great turning point in your life and in your business, to start doing something that you've never done before. And then the fourth is you can stop doing certain things altogether, what we call before zero-based thinking. So it's always more of, less of, start or stop. And I would teach everybody in my classes, the very first day, first half a day, is that I want you to think of this. And I repeated it over and over. And you know something? Every person doubled their income and doubled their time off. And some people did it in less than a month. Some people did it in less than a week with the techniques that I taught in my program. And you can do the same thing. So you have to ask, okay, now we have this virus. We have to stay at home. Business has changed. Competition has changed. Customer demands have changed. What do I need to do more of? What do I need to do less of? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to stop doing? And this is the mark of the superior thinker, is recognize that what you want to accomplish is now different. And how you can accomplish it is now different. So what have we got for time here? This is really good. How much time do we have, Steve?
Oh, you got another 3.5 minutes, Brian.
Oh, no. Want more time. Okay,
But
so
listen, but here's the thing. You're not just anybody. You're Brian Tracy. So Brian Tracy gets all the time he needs.
all right. Well, let me just give you a couple of thoughts. What I try to do is sort of like I try to move up the most valuable things I can think of when I'm talking with you. And so I move some things down and some things up, more, less, start, stop, and so on. But the other thing I want to do with regard to with staying calm is think of the valuable lessons that you can learn from what you're going through today. And remember, the lessons that you learn today are going to make you rich in the future. Is everybody who is rich today, whether it's Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or anybody else, is rich because they made big mistakes at a certain time in their career, and they learned vital lessons from those mistakes. And as a result, they became wealthy. And they all look back and they say, the reason I'm wealthy today is because of what happened to me back there. Thank heavens, what seemed to be like going through hell, what seemed to be awful, turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. So always look for the good and look for the valuable lesson in every situation. Now, the second idea that I want to leave you with is get the facts. And this is really important. I told you there's 21 ideas in this book. It's interesting. I was sharing some of these ideas with 500 people in St. Petersburg, Russia, about 3 weeks ago. And I said, by the way, I've written a book like this. And in Russia, they have published everything I've ever written. Not only that, they have bought my CDs off of Amazon, and they've taken the CDs and transcribed them. And then they have translated them into Russian, and then they've published them as books. And they're called QuickBooks. They have 20 books. I never even knew it. They took 20 of my CDs and turned them into QuickBooks. So they have more books on the market in Russia than I've written, which is interesting. There's a whole section in every bookstore in Russia. It's the Brian Tracy section. If I sold as many books in the US as I sold in Russia, I wouldn't have to be here working for Steve. And I'm just joking, of course. So I mentioned this to my audience in St. Petersburg, and while we were talking, they were on the phone, and they were coming back, and they were already buying the book out of the bookstores in St. Petersburg. And the book is there. It's a different title than Crunch Point, but so when I wrote these 21 ideas, it was based on years and years and years of research. So get the facts. One of the most important things of all is that very often when you're going through a crisis, the facts that you have are not correct. What you hear, what you've heard is not true. And so ask yourself questions. Ask yourself what exactly has happened or is happening, and how did it happen? And how can we be sure? This is really important. I've been through countless challenges in my past life and found out that they weren't true, that what people said or what people thought and so on was not quite true, that there was something missing. And then when you get the facts, like a police detective, is when you get the facts, you find out it's not so bad and that this is manageable and there are actions that you can take immediately. And what are your assumptions? And then what if your assumptions were wrong? Some people assume, well, geez, I can't do as much business as I've done in the past because of the virus and sheltering in place and so on. Well, what if that's not true? And then you look at what is the biggest, most successful, most profitable, fastest growing company in the world today? Can you guess? Starts with A and ends with Amazon. And what they're doing is they are smoking. I just read an article that I wanted to pass on to you, is that company after company after company is calling Amazon. If they sell a product of any kind, Amazon will set up a complete marketing system to help you sell that product. And they're selling millions of products of people. I just read one, they're selling loofahs. They're selling loofahs. Why? This guy's business is completely shut down. Nobody can come to his store. He's now selling loofahs on Amazon, and he's selling more loofahs than he ever thought possible. He said the critical thing is have nice packaging and quality products. He said if you have that, Amazon will actually help you get marketed, promote, advertise, and so on. So it may be, if you sell a thing, pretty hard to sell a service on Amazon, but if you sell a thing, it may very well be that Amazon can make you rich. And so instead of worrying, ask, what are my assumptions? My assumptions are that I'm out of business. No, that assumption could be completely wrong. And number three, which I talked on before, is to take responsibility. This is the great giant step into maturity, into being successful. Because when the opposite of taking responsibility is always blaming someone else for something that's going on in your life. It's always being angry at someone else. And so what you do is you wait a minute, you say, wait a minute, I'm responsible. I'm responsible. If I'm responsible, what do I do now? And the question is, what is my next step? What do I do now? So accept responsibility, help other people to accept responsibility. Say, look, the situation is what it is. Just like you don't get upset about the weather. One of my rules is never get upset about something that you can't change. And you can't change a past event. You can't change a past event. There are certain things going on in our society with regard to the virus and other things. We can't change those things. We just learn to live with them. And a question that I learned, I used to repeat it over and over in my seminars, is whenever you have a situation that's making you unhappy, ask, is this a problem or is this a fact? Is this a problem or is this a fact? A problem is amenable to a solution. There's something you can do about it. You can go over and under and up and down. You can do more of, less of, start or stop. This is something that you can have some control over. A fact is something that just is. For example, the weather is a fact. The virus is a fact. These are things that you can't change. You can only learn to work with them and help others to accept responsibility. With my kids, I brought them up so that whenever they have a problem, I say, okay, start off and you say, wait a minute, I am responsible. Don't tell me why you got kicked out of school because you did this. My son once put, with 3 other kids, they put crazy glue in the school doors and locked all the doors and nobody could get in or out. And one of their friends told on them, rolled on them, because they set up on the loudspeaker, the first person to come and tell us who did it doesn't get kicked out of school. And my son was not the first one, so he got kicked out of school. And he came home and he was really upset. I said, okay, first of all, accept responsibility. Did you do it? Yes. Would you have done it again? No. All right. Now, what are you going to do? And so we discussed it. We say, okay, accept responsibility. Don't blame anybody else. Do whatever you need to do to resolve the situation. And so he learned that from now on, and all my kids have learned it. If you get into something, accept responsibility. It's a thing that's happened, and then solve it. So these are the last things I can suggest to you. I would suggest, and people say, well, do you make money from these books? Well, the fact is that if you are a successful writer, you may earn $1 a book. So I'm not encouraging you to buy this book so that you can pay me $1 a book. It's not worth it. I never take books to seminars. I never sell books from my office. It's just not worth it. However, one of these ideas, these 21 ideas, can transform your life. Remember, the more ways of thinking that you have that enable you to make better decisions that have better consequences, the more you will weather this crisis and come out the other side, and you will be more successful than you are now. You will earn more money than you've ever earned before. And in the future, you'll look back and you'll say, thank heavens for that coronavirus, because it opened my eyes to possibilities that I would never have thought of if it hadn't occurred. So that's my contribution, Steve and Jane. I hope that's helpful to all of you guys. But I'll leave you with the last thing. And Peter Drucker is my favorite business advisor. And I was talking to my son, Michael, and Michael has become a tremendous student. And he said, did you read chapter 45 in Peter Drucker's book on management? Well, as it happens, I have this book, Peter Drucker's book on management. It's on my shelf. And I've read this book. And it's about 1,000 pages. And Drucker was asked later in his life if he would summarize all of his best ideas, and he did. I'm not going to suggest that you get it. It's 1,000 pages. It'll take you forever to read it. But anyway, I read it, and I've read all of his other books. I've got a whole shelf of Drucker books. And what Drucker said was really important. I've quoted him a couple of times, and it's basically that. What was I about to say? Son of a gun.
Page 45?
Page 45.
Is it page 45, Brian?
No, it's page. It's. I think it's chapter 45. But it wasn't what's in here. But what Drucker basically said is that the mark of leadership is how you perform in a crisis, and your job is to think like the top people and act like the top people and accept responsibility like the top people. And so I look forward to seeing you again. And I wish you great success. And remember, when you look back on these days, they may turn out to be some of the best days of your life.
Brian, if you could just stand by for just one moment. Brian, take a look at the chat window, because when you see a bunch of capital A's going across, that is a virtual standing ovation. So ladies and gentlemen, a virtual standing ovation for the legendary Brian Tracy. And Brian, hang on with us just a moment for two reasons. One is because we want to talk very briefly about a very special gift that you are giving to our WEN Global members and people on this call, and that is a significant discount on your maximum productivity program. And Jane's going to mention it. And Brian, stick around for a moment, because there's something else we're going to ask you to comment on as well. Go ahead.
Right. So all of our guests online today, if you go to the link that Amanda has put into the chat box, you'll see that you can go and purchase the Maximum Productivity online course for only $297 today. It's normally $697, but Brian's given us a really special deal for all of our guests here today. And it's really pertinent because it's 12 online courses that you can take at your own time, but it's how to be productive. And especially in these times, it's difficult to be productive. You know, we're all working at home. Some of you have kids at home. Some of you have spouses at home. It's hard, you don't have the space to maybe have your own office, and you really need to learn how to be productive, because it doesn't seem like this is going away anytime soon. So we thought this was a really great offer. Thank you for being so generous. We really appreciate it. We always love hearing you speak, and we're really grateful that you were able to come on today.
So Amanda will paste that in, and if you see the big links there that are like 1,000,000 A's, that's not the link. That's a Brian Tracy standing ovation. Now, ladies and gentlemen.